Yeah, you did a really good job in the book in the beginning of mapping out for people the different types of studies that are out there and what they do or do not show us. And one that I just want to spend a little bit of time on is the field of nutritional epidemiology.
Yes.
So, most of the time, I think it's fair to say that I'll just say much of the time, very, very much of the time, when people see a headline in the news written by a journalist, such and such diet is associated with blah, blah, good thing or bad thing. Oftentimes, those are coming from epidemiological studies. What are those studies and why is this such a tricky area?
Uh, Really, this field of nutrition epidemiology, which I'll explain in a second, there's a whole chapter about in the book. This is the information or the pseudo information that comes out of nutrition epidemiology is largely responsible for the public health crisis we find ourselves in today, because nutrition epidemiology is a wholly unscientific method of generating information. So what I mean by that really is kind of a simple example. And there's hundreds and hundreds of studies like this, where let's say that you're a nutrition epidemiologist and you are interested in the relationship between a particular food and a particular disease. Let's say that you believe that you're worried that red meat might cause heart disease. Well, it's a pretty hard thing to show that. And really, nutrition experiments are hard to design and conduct, and they're expensive. You can't control what everybody eats. You can't track what everybody eats. And you certainly can't do it over long periods of time with lots and lots of people. It's virtually impossible to do that. So instead, what we do is nutrition epidemiologists give out these surveys. They give these very limited, they're called food frequency questionnaires, and they ask people a few questions, at most maybe 130 questions, about what they remember eating over the past year and how much. So, for example, a question might be, how many half-cup servings of blueberries have you eaten on average over the past year? And
So,
so
so not only do you have to have been eating blueberries half a cup at a time and measuring it, you have to have perfect memory recall for months or years in your past. And this is what like many of these studies are based on that quality of data, literally.
all nutrition epidemiology studies are based on food frequency questionnaires, and there's no measurement or tracking or recording of food at all, except for sometimes they'll say, well, we'll actually measure what you ate over the past 3 days. But most of these studies go on for years and years, and there's no measurement, recording, or tracking of what people are actually eating over
Mm-hmm.
that period of time.
Yeah.
There's no data. They're just wild guesses.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you could argue that this isn't particularly useful data. Could you also argue that this is actually worse than useful? It's actually counterproductive because we start thinking and believing things that aren't actually true. We think we have real knowledge when we, in fact, don't.
So yes, I agree with that 100%. You're absolutely right. Science requires two things, the scientific method. There are lots of different types of studies, but if it's going to be science, it has to have two components. You have to observe something in the world and that you get curious about. And you say, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why that is. And you come up with your hypothesis. You have an observation and a hypothesis. I wonder if red meat causes heart disease, right? And then the second step is supposed to be that you test your hypothesis, you test your theory in an experiment to see if your theory is correct. If now nutrition epidemiologists spend 100% of their time in step one, and they never venture into step two. They
Mm-hmm.
never test. They never do experiments. They don't gather data in step one, so that's already a problem. But even if this were real data that we could rely on, they never test their theories to see if they're correct. If you never test your theory, you can be wrong for decades and never have to face that and
Mm-hmm.
never have to correct course. And this is exactly what's been happening in nutrition epidemiology, is that none of these so-called scientists have tested their theories themselves to find out whether or not they're true, so they can continue believing the wrong things about nutrition and human biology and health, and continue disseminating their theories. These theories get get rolled into guidelines and into nutrition headlines all the time as if they are facts, when all they are is untested theories based on wild guesses.
Mhm.